Well, Huzaifa's confession has left many stunned and fearful. Others are wondering who would even want to get his side of the story. But New York Times foreign correspondent Rukmini Callimachi felt it was an important story to tell, and she happened to be in Toronto today to speak at the U of T Rotman series, and we heard her reasons for sharing Huzaifa's story.
You will find in the media plenty of accounts of what it's like to be at an ISIS execution, typically from the perspective of survivors, civilians, who watched it. We never hear of it from the perspective of the killer.
A near sellout crowd on hand to hear Callimachi share why she felt she and the Times should tell this story of a self-confessed killer and terrorist. She says one thing in that interview left her unnerved.
When you're sitting across from them, the thing that comes through more often than not is just how eerily normal they are.
Callimachi feels that Huzaifa and others like him will often go to fight out of a feeling of injustice on how fellow Muslims are being treated in places like Syria. The images of bombing victims or those of chemical attacks making them want to go help.
These people feel that pain and then are basically in a framework that ISIS creates for them where they are able to take action on that pain in something that they think is good.
One question many people have asked Callimachi is, why did she not go to the police after the interview? She says it's important that journalists maintain their independence and not be seen as tools of police. But nonetheless, it was still a difficult decision to make.
We grappled and grappled with it, and we got some clarity when we learned that, in fact, a day after I left him, Canadian officials came to see him, and he was put under surveillance.
We know that a lot of returnees who've already gone and came back to Canada probably did something.
Amarnath Amarasingham is an expert on radicalism and was speaking with Callimachi tonight. He says even if Callimachi had gone to police, there's likely little that could have been done.
Can you prove that he did something while in Syria? Are you going to send investigators to interview other fighters, interview prisoners, interview citizens? How are you actually going to go about proving that an actual crime occurred?
Amarasingham says there are an estimated 100 Canadians who have gone to fight with ISIS and other terrorist groups who have since returned. Some are disillusioned. Many of them, though, may still be radicalized or vulnerable to taking up the cause again with the right prodding. All of them need to be treated carefully.
Much like with any prison reintegration of individuals coming out of prison, we need a whole set of resources put into place to reintegrate them into society, and even worse for the women and the children who are coming back.
While the Canadian government is downplaying any potential threat, the U.S. consulate did issue a warning for Americans traveling abroad. It reads, quote, "The U.S. government remains concerned that terrorists are intent on targeting U.S. citizens, including children. Terrorists may employ a variety of tactics, such as violent assaults and kidnappings. In the past, they have used knives, guns, and vehicles as ramming devices. They may target schools, hospitals, churches, tourist locations, transportation hubs, and other public venues," end quote. But Washington says this is a worldwide alert, not just for Canada. The latest twist this evening, Huzaifa reportedly recanted his story. He has apparently talked to another news outlet saying he was being childish and describing what he saw at the time, saying he could take a polygraph test and pass.